Hey Cougs, welcome back to the show. This episode is long awaited because I am sure some of you Cougs were around when President Elson Floyd was around. I'm sure some of you also know of this School of Medicine that was in the works for a long time. And now I'm joined by two Cougs who are finishing up the program in mere days, it seems like. It's coming soon for both of them. I'm joined by Pierce and Kyanna, and I'm just honored that you both are here on the show today. We're going to talk a little bit about their personal journeys, how they ended up at WSU, what's next, what the program is like, and then in true Kelsey fashion, I got a couple rapid fire questions that should get them a little uncomfy, but nothing too crazy. All that to say, thank you both for being here so much.
Yeah, thank you
Thank
for
you.
having us.
Yeah, and I just want to start with each of you. Could you give us a bit of your background? This is also what's cool. One of them is a lifetime Coug, many generations. The other grew up in Alaska. And so I'm excited to hear how the heck you end up studying medicine at WSU. So, Pierce, I'll have you kick it off. Tell us a little bit about your background and how you chose WSU, and then kick the can over to your partner next to you.
Yeah, thanks, Kelsey. So I'm Pierce Claassen, and I am the son of a third-generation farmer from Clarkston, Washington, a small town of about 8,000 people, just 45 minutes south of Pullman. So I've been a Coug all my life. My family is heavily involved in the agricultural community, not on the Palouse, but just south of the Palouse. So going to WSU for my undergraduate degree was a no-brainer. I decided to go up there and continue sort of carrying that pride that my family had for the institution. I graduated in 2020 with my Bachelor's of Science in Microbiology, and then immediately matriculated into the Doctor of Medicine program at the Washington State University Elson S. Floyd College of Medicine in Spokane. And that is where I first met Kyanna during our first year of medical school, which was in August of 2020, almost 4 years ago.
What a time to be in medical school, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I'm Kyanna Cusick. As you said, Kelsey, I was born in Homer, Alaska, so far from here. I have been in Eastern Washington, though, for over half my life. I moved here and graduated high school in Colville, Washington, just northeast corner. And after that, I moved to Spokane. I got my associate's degree and was in the workforce for quite a while. So before I decided to pursue medicine, I'm what they call a non-traditional student. So I did not go straight through like Pierce did, but I ended up at the WSU College of Medicine as well.
Very cool. Do you mind sharing what do you think the difference is for each of you going straight in versus taking kind of some time in between? What did that do as far as you actually being in the program? Do you feel like it gave different perspective or yeah, do you mind sharing a little bit about your journey?
Yeah, I'll say just in my opinion, the biggest difference is perspective. The non-traditional students, generally those who are older than 25 years old when they start medical school, have life experiences. Some of them were in the healthcare workforce, whether that was they were a nurse, a technician, or in some other capacity they were involved with the healthcare services. Those students generally have clinical perspective. They take into account their wide breadth of experiences to help, inform some things as we're having these discussions about managing patients who are in the hospital or outpatients who are in the clinic. And that I think is something that's really special. And then alternatively, some students didn't work in the healthcare field whatsoever. They simply took the prerequisite courses that are required to enter a medical school program to become a physician. And then they also have unique managerial experiences, public health experiences, or just other life experiences that help them, really add diversity to the class, diversity of thought, diversity of attitude. And it's really an enriching thing. And then myself, on the other hand, coming straight out of college with only a normal summer break between my bachelor's degree and the start of my Doctor of Medicine degree program, I think that, afforded me the opportunity to continue the momentum that I had already built. I was a learner. I was an active student for 4 consecutive years. So continuing on into the program for me felt natural at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm curious. Yeah, what's your answer to that?
Yeah, I agree with all that. And I think for me, being a non-traditional student, I kind of take the other approach, like having that time off. I had nearly 10 years between graduating high school and even deciding to go back and get my bachelor's degree and pursuing medicine. I found that it made it easier to focus when I was like a second time around student. And also, like when I first graduated high school, I was the first in my family to go to college, first in my family to go to professional school. And so I didn't have an idea of what I wanted to do. So having those 10 years kind of developing that idea was crucial for me.
Yeah, I love that both of you had separate journeys, and here you are. Here
Mhm.
you are today. And even then, where you're going after this is a little different as well. And I just think we think medicine and that feels specific, but there's so many different nuances within that. And I'm glad to have both of you on to talk through them. So for those listening, do you mind explaining like when was the college founded? When did it open? When was the first cohort? Because I think there's people who don't even know like that history, and it's not that long. So go ahead.
Right. So we are nearly approaching our 10-year anniversary of being a college. So the Washington State University Elson S. Floyd College of Medicine, its homestead is actually on the Washington State University Spokane Riverfront campus. So we are just south of the river of Gonzaga University up here in beautiful downtown Spokane, Washington. And our college overcame some significant hurdles in order to begin this medical school. Of course, that was spearheaded by our late WSU president, Dr. Elson S. Floyd, who died just a couple months prior of cancer to the actual creation of our college. So he was so instrumental in this, and unfortunately, he never actually saw it come to fruition, though it was very, very close at the time of his passing. I think you'd be very proud of where our college stands today. Kyanna and I are part of the 4th graduating class of physicians who will then move on to residency programs for the next steps in our professional training. Each year we graduate currently 80 medical students. So there are 80, as we call Coug docs, who are entering the residency workforce every single May from this college. Our campus is primarily located in Spokane for the first 2 years of medical school. And then as we advance to what are called our clinical clerkships, where we are actually caring for patients, that occurs in WSU Spokane, Tri-Cities, Vancouver, Washington, or Everett, Washington, just north of Seattle. So the Cougs are not just located in Pullman any longer. Here at the WSU Elson S. Floyd College of Medicine, we dig our roots deep into many different Washington communities. And I think if you ask around, folks are going to be more likely to say, yes, I've seen someone wearing a white doctor's coat that has the Elson S. Floyd College of Medicine logo on it. So it's going to become even more prevalent throughout the next 10, 20, and 30 years to see how broad our college expands throughout the state of Washington.
Yeah, I think that's great. And fun fact for those that don't know, I actually worked for WSU in the Seattle office when Elson was president. So I got to see him. Anytime he'd show up, there was this whole thing. We had to make sure we weren't wearing jeans because he was very much dressed professional. So it's very cool and full circle for my career, at least, to have this conversation because I remember when it was still an idea and in those initial stages of getting it set up. And I just think it's awesome that WSU offers this. And I mean, this is me just from my perspective, but I'm assuming it also attracts a lot of people who want to either practice rural medicine or have some kind of connection to WSU or Washington State as a whole and want to ideally do medicine there. Is that true, or is that just me assuming?
Yeah, that's part of the mission of the College of Medicine is practicing in rural areas of Washington and beyond, but really to take care of the rural communities of Washington. And so a lot of the students who are accepted into the college are, you can see statistics on the website, but a lot of them are from rural counties from Washington. There's a stipulation that you have to have very strong connections to the state. And so that's specific to the college. And I think it's a great way to realize their mission.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to hear both of you. How did you ultimately decide to go to that school? I mean, was it a no-brainer? Were there certain things you were looking for? What was that decision-making process like?
I would say the reason that I chose to study in the Doctor of Medicine degree program here at Washington State University is because it afforded the opportunity for me to stay close to home and train actually in the community that I was raised in part. I actually, just a few months back, returned home to practice at Tri-State Health in Clarkston, Washington, our rural 25-bed critical access hospital, where I was literally seen by pediatricians and family medicine providers as I was growing up from the age 0 to 22. So to have that experience alongside the mentors, physicians who cared for me as a child, but also working alongside them now as their student was quite a emotional experience. And I have to say it was great to be back home. As we always say in the song, Cougs always find their way back home. And I will add to that in saying I've also had the privilege of practicing alongside of the general surgery group, as well as other providers at the Pullman Regional Hospital, another critical access hospital that many Cougs are quite familiar with. So the College of Medicine is digging its roots deep in Washington. We have the opportunity to work with rural and underserved populations in Eastern Washington, but also all throughout the state. We are really serving our communities from the get-go in medical school. And I think that is one of the reasons why I was so excited to pursue my medical school training here, is to train close to home and care for the same people who took such great care of my family and I for many generations.
That's cool. I love that.
And I had a similar reason. WSU College of Medicine is a community medical school as opposed to an academic or a university medical school. And to me, the community part of that it fit. I grew up in rural Alaska. Everywhere in Alaska is rural. So that felt like home to me. As I said, I've lived in Eastern Washington for quite a while, and it's become home to me. And I had a similar experience to Pierce in like a full circle experience. Before I got into medical school, I was a medical scribe. I worked in a clinic here in Spokane, helping the doctors write their notes. And my last rotation of med school that I just finished up last week was going back to that clinic as a fourth year medical student with all this new knowledge and new skills and working with the doctor that I scribed for. So it was an excellent experience, and I couldn't have gotten that anywhere else.
That's so awesome. What other things do you feel like make the program unique to other options in Washington and beyond?
Mm-hmm. I will say that the Go Cougs mentality, the love for our institution and the love that Cougs have for one another, the Cougs help Cougs saying is true even throughout the College of Medicine. Our cohort of 80 students is so collegial in nature, whether it's working through our clinical work, working with our didactic lectures, doing laboratory work, or doing research projects or advocacy work. We are always picking each other up, never pushing one another away or pushing each other down. We are wanting, to build this circle of trust and mutual respect so that we can all succeed to help meet the needs of our future patients and their families. And I think that's something that really, you don't find at every single medical school, this collegial nature where we all want to see all 80 of us do wonderful things. And I think we are a testament to that, having went through the curriculum the past 4 years, worked alongside so many amazing people who have different life experiences and different goals as far as where they are going for their next steps in their training. We will always be a part of the Cougar family. And even those who didn't train at Washington State University for their undergraduate degrees, I can still get them to say "Go Cougs." Nice.
That was $1 million question I had, and yeah, I think you answered it. But I need to hear from the non-traditionalist who wasn't Coug through and through. What's your perspective on that?
I agree. I think the school really it spoke to me with its culture of collaboration, not competition. I felt that during my interview day. I've felt that since I decided to come here. I feel it today. And I really feel like I've been welcomed in. I didn't have to go to the WSU undergraduate campus to become a Coug. So I've loved it.
So you'll say "Go Cougs" out loud in public?
I will. Go Cougs.
Good. I love that. I was curious how that would affect the culture, just the nature of the level of academics, but also being in Spokane. It's close to Pullman, but it is different. It's a different thing. And I think the Cougar culture to me runs deep, and it's cool to see that it's still having those continued ripple effects in your program. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think it's to get more Coug docs in Washington hospitals and beyond. That's going to be really cool to see in the years to come. So.
Yeah, and I will say our classes initially, when the college was first started, there were only 60 medical students in each class. Now we have 80, and there are plans to grow. But we have to make sure all the infrastructure, all the core faculty, the clinical faculty are in place to build a robust and highly vetted training program to train the best quality of physicians here to serve the people in Washington State. But I will say, Kelsey, that the program is growing quite rapidly in the medical school sense, but also with our residency training programs. Our first residency program that we created was an internal medicine residency at WSU in Everett. The second one we created was a WSU family medicine residency. There are 3 students annually who will go down to complete their family medicine training actually at Pullman Regional Hospital. So these are Cougs who are going to complete the last step in their training in the motherland where WSU is, right? In the rolling hills of the Palouse. Most recently, we actually created a pediatrics residency program here at the Providence Sacred Heart Children's Hospital in Spokane, Washington, one of the nation's most broadly reaching children's hospitals that we are fortunate enough to train at. There are residents now, resident physicians who are learning and who are proudly wearing the WSU badge on their shoulder of their white coat. So the Cougs are becoming more and more prevalent, both in medical school and through the graduate medical education.
Yeah, I'm here for that. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
So, when we're thinking of what's next for you guys, do you mind explaining? We were just talking about this off air, but do you mind explaining kind of the different steps that happen through your program and where both of you are at and where you are headed next?
Mm-hmm.
And then I have a follow-up question to that.
Sure. So medical school itself is 4 years. Pierce and I are both completing our 4th year, and we have just matched. So our next step is residency. And as a physician, you train for anywhere 3 to 10 years after medical school in your chosen specialty. And so it's a very long, complicated process, but it's called matching. And we both actually matched into the Mayo Clinic in Phoenix, Arizona. And so we're both going to different programs in the same location starting in June.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. And so you wrap up May and then you start June. And what's the demand like once you're there? I mean, is it you're basically working? Like, what's a normal day going to look like as much as you can anticipate?
Sure. So the demand for resident physicians in the workforce is quite intensive. It has gotten better, more humane throughout the years. It's still
That's a good word.
It's still quite the intensive process, in all honesty, Kelsey. But it's necessitated that we complete those rigorous training hours in order to most appropriately care for patients and their families. We have to get enough exposure to pathology or different disease states in order to be able to recognize critical illness when it comes around and really serve our patients to the best of our capabilities and do the system the service that we owe. So as Kyanna mentioned, I will be completing internal medicine residency at the Mayo Clinic in Arizona with the end goal of becoming a gastroenterologist and hepatologist, or a physician that focuses on disorders of the gastrointestinal tract. So that's something I'm quite passionate about. And I hope to certainly come back, whether it's in 10, 20, or 15 years from now, back to Eastern Washington and care for the community that took care of my family and I, as I said, for many generations. So I hope to be one of the first Cougs to come back and really, leave my mark in that regard. So, yeah.
And I'll be training down there as a diagnostic radiologist, or the physician that interprets imaging that comes through.
How do you decide? How do you decide what your specialty is, and at what point do you have to make that decision?
Yeah, so there's a select few that know without a doubt what they want to do when they come into med school. And I was actually one of those.
As was I.
And as was Pierce. And so that's kind of funny that we're both here as the people that knew that. But most people don't decide. You have to be exposed to all sorts of things, all your clinical rotations, all the systems in medicine throughout medical school. And you really have to decide by your 4th year. It makes it easier if you've decided before then, because you can be working toward your goal. But you apply in your 4th year and find out where you're going.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just feels like a lot of pressure.
Yeah. It's a rigorous process, no doubt. And just delving into the match process a little bit more, the residency matching program, Kyanna and I applied to dozens and dozens of residency training programs throughout the United States. after we apply and interview at these programs, we actually rank the programs in an algorithm, and the programs rank us as applicants. And the numbers are fed into this complex algorithm that ultimately matches us with our highest preferred program at a program that also ranked us as preferable applicants. It's quite the drawn out process, and it's somewhat difficult to understand. So on Friday, March 15th at 9:00 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, Kyanna and I received an email that says, "Congratulations, you matched, and you are going to the Mayo Clinic in Arizona for residency." So we didn't know where we were going until we opened that email in front of our friends and families. So it's a nerve-wracking process, no doubt, but it's been a beautiful journey, and we're thankful to have went on this path.
Yeah, I just think it's so cool, and what a unique thing WSU has to offer.
Mhm.
And yeah, I just appreciate you sharing the process, because I think a lot of people just don't know, and you're in it right now. You're really in it.
Yeah.
And in that same vein, I want to know, I know you're wrapping up school soon, or at least this portion of it. What's a normal day like? Like, walk us through this chapter. You're finishing up in what, a month-ish? What's a
Mhm.
normal day look like for both of you?
So normal day for a fourth year, I would say, is you're in clinical rotations, meaning you are seeing patients during the day, and you're finishing up notes, you're studying at night, doing paperwork, everything like that. So it really depends on what rotation you're on. Um, Surgical rotations start earlier in the morning, so do, hospital rotations. If you're in clinics, and those can start later in the day. Different locations start different times, and so that really kind of that depends on where you're rotating, but they're pretty full days.
Like,
And the
how
unique
many
thing,
hours are we talking? Give us some perspective here.
we can work 70 hours in a week. 70 hours in a week. In residency, we are capped at working 80 hours in a week. So if you ever run into a resident physician or a medical student who is deep into their clinical training, be gracious to them and know that we work long hours and care for very complex patients with complex needs. But it's a beautiful journey, as I've said.
Yeah.
Traditionally, how it works at the Washington State University Elson S. Floyd College of Medicine is the first 2 years, students are in the classroom. They are working and learning from physicians and scientists about normal processes of the human body, and then pathological processes or disease states. From there, we also learn about pharmacology, the medications and the procedures that we use to treat those pathologies that I mentioned. So that's really in theory. And then as you move on to your third and fourth year of medical school, that is where you are in the clinics, in the hospitals, in the operating room, full-time, caring for those patients and really applying the foundational knowledge that you built in years 1 and 2 to real clinical scenarios. And that is where I think Kyanna and I will both outstandingly agree. That is where you learn. That's where you learn how to act like a physician.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
This is where I think the general public can learn from you. How do you balance all of that? Because that's quite demanding, and there's just so many hours in a day, and there's some days where you just have to, like, push the gas just a little bit more. That's just the reality of what you're working through right now. So what advice do you have in balancing that work-life balance and all those responsibilities?
Think, yeah, like you said, that it's really important to find balance. And for me, I think being a non-traditional student who has had all this time to mature and learn things about myself and about life before becoming a student again, I think that's really helped to know how to balance and when to balance, and when you've done as much as you can do that day, and when it's, when you need to pick it back up the next day, and when to go outside and recharge and just, kind of take a break. And I think it's important to remember that it's a long journey. Like, when I signed up for undergrad and like becoming a doctor, I knew it was at least a 14-year process to be where I wanted to be. And that sounds long. And so remembering that it's a long process to a career that is, fulfilling and interesting. I think remembering that really helps.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I will say it's all about the community, right? Maintaining a strong relationship with all of your family and friends, those that you have outside of medicine in particular, because this is a complicated system. We go through complicated educational processes that not a lot of people fully understand the breadth of. So it's nice to have those friends that are outside of medicine so we can remember that we are all just humans trying to leave our mark in the world and become better people and help those around us. I think that's really helped me gain perspective. Of course, I still do something that is meaningful to all of us Cougs and make my way down from Spokane to Pullman on Saturdays during the fall football season to cheer on our Cougs with 35,000 of my closest friends in Martin Stadium.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Pierce, you must be reading my notes because my follow-up question, and this is me just being genuinely curious, how connected are you to WSU? And do you feel like that's same or different because one of you obviously has the WSU undergrad experience versus not? Are you coming to Pullman very often? What does that feel like from your experience? And also just the time constraint of your degree that you're pursuing. So how close are you guys to the WSU experience, you think?
Yeah, I would say that as medical students in the College of Medicine, we are different from the rest of WSU in the sense that we are enrolled in a intensive professional healthcare degree program to get a Doctor of Medicine degree. So we are not like the undergraduate students, that are out doing all these events all the time because, like Kyanna mentioned, we have significant time constraints with all of our studying, our extracurricular activities, let alone our clinical duties that we must fulfill to care for our patients. So I think with the time constraints, we're not as able to be as immersed in the stereotypical WSU community as the undergraduate students, nor the graduate students in Pullman may be. But I will say that in medical school, I have found time to go to volleyball games, basketball games, and of course, football games in Pullman. So that has been wonderful. And as far as like the immersion in the WSU system as a whole, I feel like we are Cougs. And I can say that I think with some merit, since I did get my bachelor's degree from Pullman, it does feel like you have that same sense of warmth, that sense of community to support one another. And you, like any time when you are wearing a WSU logo on your chest, walking through the Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport, if you see another person who's a WSU alum or even a fan, you're going to get a Go Cougs. And it's always good to give it back to them and say Go Cougs. So, yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Mhm.
Kyanna, I'm curious what your advantage is on this.
I think coming in as kind of an outsider, I've still felt very welcomed by the Coug community. Two of my sister-in-laws went to WSU for undergrad. Like I said, I've been in Eastern Washington, which is Coug country.
True.
And I actually went and did an emergency medicine rotation down in Pullman, which they treated me like one of their own. And so I've felt that too. I've felt, welcomed by the community. But we're up here in Spokane. A lot of people, I've done a lot of education with people thinking that I drive up from Pullman every day for school and, letting them know that the campus is actually here for the College of Medicine.
Yeah. Yeah. I honestly, I had to Google it just to make sure. I'm pretty sure it is in Spokane, but I just want to make sure I got this right. And at least Pullman, Spokane isn't a huge distance to where a volleyball game when you have a couple hours isn't out of reach, right?
And interestingly enough, I will say, keep an eye out for us Coug docs, us student physicians at events. Dr. Ed Tingstad with the Pullman Regional Hospital Orthopedic Surgery team, he's been gracious enough to lead our orthopedic surgery interest group and sports medicine interest group. He takes students and allows them to accompany him during football games. I have done that twice in my college career, and he frequently takes students to basketball games as well. So shout out to Dr. Tingstad and the whole Pullman orthopedics team that's been nice to us as well.
Hey, while we're at it, you brought up his name. We tried to get him on, but he had to scrub in last minute and had to cancel on me. And I've heard wonderful things about him. We had the CEO on, Matt Forge, but he's definitely another Coug I'd love to have on.
Dr. Tingstad, his Cougar pride runs deep. And
yes,
it is,
so I have heard many a times.
Yeah.
But I love that. I'm going to follow up with him after this. That's really cool. And I think, again, unique to our culture. And I just think it's really, really an interesting thing that you guys have gotten to experience. And thank you for sharing some of that with us. I have one last question before we jump into the rapid fire, which is, what do you wish more people knew or understood about your program? And that can be Cougs at large or just the everyday person. I'll let you choose.
Yeah, I'll have to think about that.
Mm-hmm.
I will say, just know that what our college is doing is quite unique. Up until 2015, when our college was created by Elson Floyd and legislators and the governor's office, we had to pass legislation to make this college a reality. Up until then, there was only one allopathic or MD school in the state of Washington. It's that other institution across the other side of the mountains. But now there are two, and we are strong, and we have a significant presence here in the state. And I encourage the listeners of the podcast to keep their eyes out when they're in the hospital, either themselves or visiting loved ones, friends, family in the hospital. Keep an eye out for folks wearing white physician's jackets and look at the logo on their shoulder, because chances are you're going to see crimson and gray, and that's going to be a student or a resident physician with the Elson S. Floyd College of Medicine. And say go Cougs to those people as well. They are Cougs.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll have to keep thinking on that one because I think one thing that I do wish people knew was that the college exists.
Mhm.
Same.
I think being the fourth class that comes through, when I say I'm going here to, WSU College of Medicine, they think I'm in a nursing program.
Mhm.
And the nursing program has been around for longer than the College of Medicine. And so, I wish it was more known that WSU has a medical school.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, hey, today we're trying to do our part, right?
Right.
Okay, I told you it would go quick, and now we have to enter the rapid fire. I have 5 questions. I'll just have you both take turns answering them, and it's just kind of what quickly comes to mind for these. Are you guys ready?
Yes.
Sure.
Okay, first question. Where are you most productive?
Mm.
In my office, very late at night before a deadline.
That I second that. Being in your pressure zone where you have a deadline to meet or multiple deadlines that coincide. That's that sort of space and time that I'm most productive. But literally, I think the brick and mortar that we have at WSU Health Sciences in Spokane, where the College of Medicine is based, pretty good steady spaces. Right now, we're in this beautiful medical student specific space. So it's really nice to have these places to study. And I think we do good work here.
That's great. Number 2, what book or podcast has changed your life the most?
I will say I'm not much of a reader for pleasure. I have to do enough of that in my line of work. But a podcast that's changed my life, at least professionally, I listen to clinical guidelines-based podcasts. So the American Journal of Gastroenterology podcast, I listen to it on 1.5 times speed to just get the latest, greatest information within the field of digestive diseases to help take better care of my patients. I think that's something that I find myself doing, not when I'm at the gym trying to get motivated, but when I'm driving to the hospital, driving to the clinic to get that last piece of knowledge for the day.
And we're glad you're doing it, and then you can just share it with your expertise so we don't have to listen to that either.
As far as a podcast that did change my life was the Medical School Headquarters podcast. Dr. Ryan Gray has he has a line of podcasts for people who are interested in going to medical school and becoming, a physician. And his motto is collaboration, not competition. And I think that really that motivated me to find a school like WSU.
Oh, that's awesome. Very cool. Okay. Your top 3 reasons that someone should come study at the program you're just finishing. Just quick top 3 reasons.
Cougar spirit, obviously number 1. It has to be. We love crimson and gray. Cougar spirit, the collegiality, which I think is encompassed in that Cougar spirit, how we work together to meet the needs of our patients and to help each other achieve our individual goals. And then just the brevity that is a part of this community too. The levity and the brevity, nobody is here to waste anybody's time. Every interaction that you have with faculty, with your fellow students, they're always meaningful. You're going to get something out of every conversation you have in the hallway, whether it's on campus or at the hospital. everyone is always interested in seeing you succeed. And I think that extends all the way up to the attending physicians, the full professors of medicine who are here to help us, but also just our classmates. We're an awesome group of people, and we have some cutting edge things occurring here all throughout the state of Washington in this medical school.
Great sales pitch.
I think for me, it'd have to be the Cougar spirit with the community that is available here. The clinical experiences that you're able to get with this school, oftentimes it's you and the attending. You get to be first assist on procedures. You get to ask all your questions to somebody who's been practicing for, 20 plus years. It's an incredible opportunity that you don't get at a lot of other medical schools.
Yeah.
And location.
Mhm.
I think, even if you just spend your first 2 years in Spokane, it's a wonderful location to learn and to live in.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, number 4. What's the best playlist to listen to when you're studying or working?
Best playlist. As I mentioned, I'm the son of a third generation farmer. So, I'm listening to that 70s, 80s, and 90s country music. Lots of Randy Travis, Alan Jackson, Vince Gill, the whole works, all the outlaw country as well. So I don't know if that's everyone's choice. That might be me being the lone soldier in that regard, but it's definitely something that keeps me going as I'm working through my exams and taking my study time out of the day.
I have a very calm instrumental studying playlist that I found on Spotify. And it's very calming every time I turn it on. Then I know my brain switches and I know it's time to study.
Yeah, that's awesome. You'll both have to drop your links or something. That'll be fun to have. We'll have a listen party.
Okay.
Okay. And the last rapid fire question is, what's the best kept secret of Spokane?
I don't think it's really a secret because I think the parks and all the outdoor spaces are known. But I would say just the amount of trails and outdoor spaces you can get to from Spokane in a short amount of time. I live 1 mile, I'm a 1 mile walk from Riverside State Park, and then there's miles and miles of trails, and you could drive in any direction, and I think there's 70 lakes within 2 hours from here. I think that's an excellent secret.
The last thing I will say, specifically in the medical vein, people don't know how much of a medical hotspot Spokane, Washington is. We have a large trauma 2 medical center here, as well as 3 other smaller hospitals that care for patients quite literally from the Cascade Mountains all the way out to the Minnesota area. So we really see a wide breadth of clinical pathology and take care of some extraordinarily complex patients. But with that, we work alongside some of the most competent physicians and surgeons that you will find anywhere in the Pacific Northwest. The providers here that are training us Coug docs are some of the most talented and kind, generous healthcare providers that I've ever had the pleasure of meeting. And it would be fantastic to come back here and become one of their colleagues someday as an attending physician when all of my clinical training is done.
Shameless plug. Well, remember this however many years down the road when Pierce is looking. But I love that. I think that's amazing. And I did not know that either. So there you go. I told you it would go fast. It flew by. I just appreciate both of you so much for coming on, sharing your experience. And for those listening that want to find out more about the program, do you mind giving a little shout out on where they can do so? Because I think to Kyanna's point, more Cougs need to know about this. More people need to know about this. So go ahead and plug that.
I would just say to find the best, most up-to-date information about the Washington State University Elson S. Floyd College of Medicine, go to www.wsu.edu. That is our medical college specific website where you're going to find anything about admissions, how you can get into the medical school and become a student here, but also about alumni engagement, where we are going for our training. And also you can follow me on Instagram, Twitter, X at Pierce Claassen. So very grateful for the opportunity to visit with you all, Kelsey, and hope that some Cougs found this podcast enlightening and they learned something more about our great university.
Yeah. Thank you both for being on. Spread the word. Coug docs are taking over. That's all we got today. Thank you so much, and go Cougs.
Go
Thank you.
Cougs.
Go Cougs.